How to create a basic blurring effect on someone's face. The next step is to animate that blur so that it can follow the person's face throughout some action in the scene. So the clip I'm using for this is a clip from the Sahara folder of the guy on a motorbike, and he moves out of the shadows towards and to the left, our left. And what I want to do is create a mask that's going to follow him and then use that mask to create a blur effect on his face. So I'm going to need to start the effect when his face becomes visible, so that'll be roughly here. So I'll put a mark there or a marker on the timeline, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my my transparent circle PNG file that I used in the previous video to create the masking effect. So the first thing I'll do is to drag that down on top where it needs to be so that it's covering the guy's face. Now what I'm going to do first is to scale it down. Just bring the playhead back there. Now I might zoom in here and size that down. Again, hold down shift if you want to turn it into more of an oval shape. Okay, so that will do for that particular point in the video. Alright, so what I need to do is I need to get the mask to follow him across. So I'm going to have to go into my motion tab and animate that, and I'm going to load the PNG file up in the viewer. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'll move into 2-up mode to give myself more room to work in the motion tab. Now, the technique for doing this, to get the object to follow the guy's face, is to move him a good deal across until he starts to change direction, which is roughly here. So what I can do now is I can put a keyframe on the center, and I'll actually put a keyframe on the center property back at the start as well. So I'll move again to that keyframe. Now what I'm going to do is to move it up here so that it follows him, and what I should get, turn off the snapping, is roughly following him. But it doesn't perfectly follow him, so what I'll do is I go midway between the two keyframes here and reposition it. So the idea is that you go from two key points in the movement, animate the object, and if it doesn't match up, you go halfway back between those 2 points, such as here, and you make it match up there. So what you're doing is you're going back halfway, saving yourself going frame by frame. Do the same here, and after a while it should start to match up. Now he changes direction here, so I need to put a keyframe roughly here. Now I'm going to need to change the scale property here as well, so I'm going to put a few keyframes there, one there, go back to my keyframe here and increase the size of that. And I'll go back along, see does it follow him properly. I could maybe match it up a little bit better here, and so on. So I'm just going to keep going here now. So I'll put another one here and scale it up. Test that, that's okay. And roughly here I'm going to need another one because he moves quite a good distance, and that should pretty much cover me for the rest of the clip. So I'll just maybe follow him to here. And because I don't need to follow him any further, what I can do is I can get the blade tool, turn on snapping, and just cut the graphic off there. Now what I have is I have the shape following him, so it's just an animated version of what I was looking in the previous video. So the next step is to get these layers in order so that I can use this as a travel matte layer. So I click, hold down shift and drag that up just to move it above. Change the composite mode at the top layer to travel matte alpha. So you can see that it's actually just following him perfectly there now. And we can see his face. So that's the opposite of what we want. We want to obscure it. So just as in the last video, I'll hold down Alt, click and drag and hold down Shift and then let go to have identical layers top and bottom, except the bottom layer, actually, which I should switch to back to normal. It's going to be the regular layer, and this one is now going to be the blurred layer. So I go back into my filters, change this back to standard, into my effects, video filters, blur, Gaussian blur, and increase the radius. So now you'll see his face on the right become blurred. Now, if I want to, I can also drag that Gaussian blur down onto the PNG to soften the edges of that. Now, just fit this to window. Render this portion of the timeline. Play that back. Okay, ignore that. Now I could fine tune that even more. Now what you will notice that at this point here, before the motorcyclist comes into the light, the mask is already sitting there. So I know that I only wanted to start there, so what I can do is trim that graphic in a little bit on that side and re-render that. Play it so that the graphic only appears at the right moment. Now, he does kind of appear out of the blurred portion once or twice there, but that just means going back in and changing the some of the keyframes or adding new keyframes throughout.